Hello, this is Steve at SDRplay. In today's video we're going to look at some more Panadapter tips and tricks inspired by some of the questions that have come in from our users. First up, I want to talk about synchronizing VFO-A and VFO-B between SDRuno and the rig, and that leads into a discussion about band framing and use of the ello lock or local oscillator lock button. And then I'm going to look at something a little different, using the new RSPduo as a Panadapter, either using a shared antenna or using separate antennae on each of the tuners in the RSPduo. So right away, let's get into looking at VFO-A and VFO-B. SDRuno. for a Panadapter. Tuner 1, and you've got all sorts of other options for using Tuner 2. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video useful. As always, for more information, please visit our website at www.sdrplay.com. 73.